Imagine risking your life to save strangers, only to be met with suspicion and hate. This is the story of Marcus, a firefighter who braved the Los Angeles wildfires to save lives while facing the unthinkable. The Los Angeles wildfires were some of the most devastating in history. Homes destroyed, families displaced, and lives lost. Amid the chaos, one firefighter, Marcus, emerged as a hero. But instead of gratitude, he faced something far uglier: racism. This is a story about courage, prejudice, and the fight to be seen for who you truly are. The fires were relentless, consuming everything in their path. For Marcus, a veteran firefighter, this wasn't his first battle against flames, but it was his most personal. As one of the only black firefighters in his unit, Marcus had always felt a subtle tension. Some colleagues were welcoming, but others questioned his capabilities, often making snide remarks behind his back. When the wildfires reached his neighborhood, Marcus knew he couldn't stand by. He volunteered to lead evacuation efforts in one of the hardest-hit areas, a predominantly affluent white community. The work was grueling. He rescued families trapped in their homes, carried elderly residents to safety, and even risked his life to save pets left behind in the chaos. But instead of appreciation, Marcus began to notice the whispers, the stares. "Why is he here?" someone muttered as he helped an elderly woman into a rescue vehicle. Another resident refused to open their door when Marcus knocked, saying, "We're fine, we don't need help." The final straw came when a man accused him of looting. "What's in your bag?" the man demanded, pointing to Marcus's first aid kit. Marcus calmly explained, "It's medical supplies," but the man's suspicion lingered, his eyes narrowing as if he didn't believe him. The fire was out of control, raging like it had no end. Marcus wasn't thinking about himself, though. He had one goal: save lives. That's all that mattered to him. He pushed away all the stress, the exhaustion, even the negativity that sometimes came with the job. One evening, while helping organize an evacuation, Marcus overheard two people talking nearby. One said, "I bet he's just here to use this for himself, to look good." The other added, "I don't trust him. I don't care what he's done." Those words hit Marcus like a punch in the stomach. He stood there for a second, frozen. How could they say that? After all he'd done, risking his life, pulling people out of danger, making sure families were safe. They still didn't trust him. That night, when Marcus got back to the station, he couldn't keep it in anymore. He went straight to his captain. "Why is it," he asked, his voice heavy, "that no matter how hard I work, some people only see my skin color?" His captain listened, his expression serious. The man was always supportive, but he didn't sugarcoat things either. "Marcus," the captain said, "you're not going to change everyone's mind. Some people are stuck in their ways, and that's on them, not you. But what you're doing here, saving lives, making a difference, that matters. That's what counts. Focus on that." Those words stuck with Marcus. He realized he couldn't let the ignorance of a few define how he saw himself or his work. It wasn't easy, but he made a choice right then. He wasn't going to let prejudice win. From that day on, Marcus showed up to every call, every fire, every rescue, with even more determination. He knew what he was doing mattered, maybe not to everyone, but to the people whose lives he saved, and that was enough. The next day, the fire got way worse. Marcus's team got called to one of the richest neighborhoods in the city. It was a fancy cul-de-sac with big houses, but the flames were closing in fast. Some families were still inside, hoping the fire wouldn't reach them. Marcus and his team rushed in. They knocked on every door, yelling for people to evacuate. At one house, things were really bad. A little girl was trapped inside with her grandmother, and the fire had already surrounded them. There was no easy way out. Marcus didn't even think twice. He grabbed a fire blanket, wrapped it tightly around the girl, and carried her out. The smoke was thick, but he didn't stop. After getting the girl to safety, he turned right back around and went in for her grandmother. He guided her step by step, through the smoke and falling debris until they were both safe. As they got to the clear, the little girl's parents ran up. They were crying and shaking, overwhelmed with relief. "Thank you," they said over and over, barely able to speak. For a second, Marcus felt seen. It felt good to be recognized for what he'd done. But just as he was walking back to the fire truck, covered in soot and completely drained, another guy came up to him. This man didn't look relieved. He looked angry. "What were you doing in my house?" the man asked, his tone sharp and accusing. Marcus stared at him, exhausted beyond belief. He didn't have the energy to explain himself or argue. He just said the only thing that mattered. "Saving lives," he replied and walked away. When the fires were finally under control, word started spreading about what Marcus had done. People were talking about how brave he was, and local news even picked up the story. Reporters interviewed the families he had saved, and they couldn't stop praising him. One day, a journalist sat down with Marcus to ask about everything he went through. She asked him what the hardest part was, and for a moment, Marcus didn't know what to say. Then he finally answered, "The fire wasn't the hardest part. It was proving I belonged." Those words hit people hard. His comment got people talking, not just about the fires, but about racism and the way some people judge others, even in life or death situations. Some folks in the community realized how wrong they'd been. They reached out to Marcus, apologizing for the way they had treated him or thought about him. They wanted to show their support and let him know they saw him differently now. But not everyone was willing to change. Some people held onto their bias, refusing to admit they might have been wrong. They just doubled down, acting like Marcus's bravery didn't matter because of the way they'd already decided to see him. For Marcus, it was bittersweet. He was glad his actions made a difference and sparked real conversations, but he knew there were still people out there who wouldn't give him the respect he deserved. Even so, he didn't let that stop him. He kept showing up, doing his job, and proving that actions speak louder than prejudice. Marcus's story gained traction beyond his neighborhood. It became a symbol of the dual battles many black professionals face: the fight to do their job and the fight against systemic racism. Fire departments across the country began discussions on diversity and inclusion. Marcus was invited to speak at events, sharing his experiences and advocating for change. For Marcus, it wasn't just about being a firefighter anymore. It was about creating a world where no one would have to prove their humanity while saving lives. Marcus's story teaches us that heroism isn't just about courage in the face of danger. It's about standing tall in the face of prejudice. It's about showing the world that your value isn't determined by the assumptions of others, but by the actions you take. His journey reminds us that we all have a role to play in challenging bias and uplifting those who fight for justice, even when the odds are stacked against them. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and courage, and let's continue the fight for justice together. Have you ever been falsely accused or felt like no one believed you? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you overcame it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire and challenge the way we see the world.